Been called the most important election this year because it could decide the future of abortion rights, redistricting, and more in a key battleground state. Voters in Wisconsin can cast their ballots starting today in the state's high-stakes Supreme Court race. And later today, Republican-backed Dan Kelly will face off against Democrat-supported Janet Protasiewicz for the first and only debate just 2 weeks before Election Day. Whoever wins the April 4th election for a seat vacated by the retirement of a conservative justice will determine majority control of the court for at least the next 2 years, including leading up to the 2024 presidential election. The Wisconsin Supreme Court came within one vote of overturning former President Donald Trump's defeat in 2020, and this year's election is expected to be tight, with the minority vote seen as crucial in a state where about 80% of the population is white. Joining us now, Academy Award-winning screenwriter and founder of No Studios, John Ridley. He grew up in Wisconsin and held an event last week with young people to help turn out the vote. Ridley, it's great to see you again. Obviously, your home state, but tell us what compelled you to get involved in this way.
As you say, Mika, it's where I was born and raised. My parents still live in Wisconsin. My parents were about service. My father was a doctor who served in the U.S. Air Force. My mother is a teacher. Her younger sister, Beth, her family still lives there. And with my older sister, Lisa, as you mentioned, we started No Studios, which is really about art and activism. And over the last year, we've held debates with the Republican gubernatorial candidates. We held Q&As with Senator Ron Johnson, as well as Governor Tony Evers, and as well as Q&A with both of the candidates, Dan Kelly, as you mentioned, and Janet Protasiewicz, which is, as someone from Wisconsin, that is a very good, durable Wisconsin name. So we had a Q&A with them with WISN in Milwaukee. And this really is an important election. Mickey, you mentioned it all. Reproductive rights, the laws in Wisconsin date back to 1849. So before members of my family were free people, these laws about women's rights were in place. Gerrymandering, gun control, potentially overseeing elections, all of that is on the ballot. And in Wisconsin and frankly across America, unfortunately, young people are more likely to go to concerts than they are to vote. So among the things that we're doing, we're part of the I Voted Festival. More information about that, go to ivotedfestival.org. People should vote no matter what. But if you vote, if you show that you're a voter, you can go to free concerts across Wisconsin. We want to get people out. This is important. We know people are tired of hearing about every election is an important election, but that's the truth. And if we don't engage and we're not part of the process, things won't change. However you believe, whether I agree with you or not on the policy, vote. Be part of the process.
Yeah, you know, John, Wisconsin really is just the heart of so many challenges. And when Democrats, you know, a couple of years ago were complaining about this happening or that happening, and how could this be? I'd say, you know what? Republicans have gerrymandered the state. Republicans focus on local politics. Republicans focus on this sort of stuff. So if you didn't like the jury instructions in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, Jesus didn't write those instructions. They didn't come down from high. It was by the state legislature, who was elected by local people. If you don't like the fact that Democrats always outperform against Republicans and compared to how many seats they get in the state legislature, well, again, don't blame the gods, blame yourself. And so I can't think of a state that's more important for people who care about representative democracy and who hate gerrymandering to focus on than Wisconsin, because it's as bad as it gets.
Yeah, Wisconsin, Joe, is probably the swingiest of swing states. As mentioned, Senator Ron Johnson, very conservative Republican, was reelected by a wide margin. At the same time, Governor Tony Evers, very progressive Democrat, in my opinion, a great guy, was also reelected. So you see a lot of people who are splitting votes, crossing line to vote for the person who they believe in. And also just an indication of how important Wisconsin is to the national landscape. In 2020, The Democratic National Convention was meant to be held in Milwaukee because of the pandemic. It was held virtually. It wasn't held in person. But in the next presidential election cycle, the Republican National Committee is holding their convention in Milwaukee because how Wisconsin goes, and you know, look, this is truism. We know we're focused on Georgia, Michigan, places like that. Wisconsin is as purple as it gets, and both sides want to really plant their flags and try to drive that vote. You mentioned the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. You know, I was in Wisconsin during the first shooting. A black man was shot in his back 7 times by police officers. Kyle Rittenhouse used a self-defense in his defense, talking about self-defense, even though he was underage and carrying a gun at that time. You know, Wisconsin is full of stress points. I love that state. It is my home state. It is where I'm from. I returned there to have a business for a reason. But all of these issues are incredibly important, and there was an active effort, and in fact, Republicans talked about it with pride of how they tried to suppress the vote in Milwaukee. As Mika mentioned, 80% of the population of Wisconsin is white. Wonderful people, great people, but there are opportunities to really divide people in that regard. We can't have that again where people are actively suppressing the vote. Again, I may not like how that vote goes, but there's a difference between saying to everyone your vote counts or luxuriating, truly luxuriating the fact that you stopped people from voting. That's not right.
John, it is so great to see you, my friend. I know you miss sitting next to me as much as I do to you at 4 o'clock in the morning in Secaucus, New Jersey 15 years ago. But it's great to have you back on the show. You mentioned the Senate race there with Ron Johnson. Another one coming up, by the way, with Tammy Baldwin fighting to keep her seat in 2024. We'll see how that race plays out. Want to get your smart brain on the bigger stuff playing out that we've been talking about this morning as well. We've got a Manhattan DA potentially going to indict Donald Trump. We've got a case down in Georgia as well with the Fulton County DA down there. We've got January 6th. We've got the Mar-a-Lago documents all out in front of this former president, and also now a House of Representatives controlled by Republicans who are looking to rally defense around Donald Trump, talking about the, quote, weaponization of the federal government, the weaponization of the district attorney's office. What do you hear when you hear that term?
Yeah, I'm going to try to be very, very calm. And Joe, Mika, Willie, you know, I have been writing about policing and community going back to an article I wrote in Esquire. People may have challenged the direction I came from. They never challenged the facts. When I hear, and I want to be careful how I say this, because I don't want to paint with a wide brush or try to indict all white folks. But when I hear from privileged white men talking about the weaponization of the law, they don't know what they are talking about. As a person of color, as a black man, the law has been weaponized against us, going back to the Constitution and being considered 3/5 of human beings. What do you call slavery? What do you call failed Reconstruction? Jim Crow, segregation. If you are an Asian American, the Chinese Exclusion Act, that's weaponization. Executive Order 9066 is weaponization. I'm not going to explain what that is. I'm sure Professor Ron DeSantis will tell you all about that. If he won't, you won't read it about books in school. But individuals talking about the weaponization, you know, as black and brown people, we're told that part of the problem with negative interactions between community and police is because we don't comply. We don't listen. We don't appreciate law enforcement. We don't care about this country. But the moment that the process is in play, as it should, I don't know if Donald Trump is guilty or not, but I know that the court of law is where an individual goes to literally have their day. And when it happens to them, when the process is presented, all of a sudden, whoa, it's being weaponized. It's being turned against me. You know, you have Kevin McCarthy, you have Jim Jordan say, hey, we want you to come in, and they're saying this to Alvin Bragg, come in and answer questions. That's what the court is for. And I have a bigger problem. And again, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. But when you have the Kevin McCarthys of the world saying to a black prosecutor, you need to come in and answer questions. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're not living on the plantation anymore. He has no right, no reason to ask this individual to come in and answer questions when that is what the court is for, that is what juries are for, that is what evidence is for, that is what grand juries are for. not for Kevin McCarthy, not for Jim Jordan, who, by the way, when they're asked to answer questions, when you literally see a white riot and they don't want to talk about that, don't switch the game on us. Don't flip the script. And I would hope Mr. Bragg, well, I hope that he obeys the law and respects the law, as we do. Again, Joe, my father served in the U.S. military. He didn't hate this country. I had an uncle who was a Tuskegee Airman. My father-in-law, despite the fact that his family was interned in the Japanese internment, served his country. We don't hate this country. We love it. We love it with our flesh. We love it with our blood. We love it with our vote. But what we have problems with is when the law is turned against us, when the law is used as it chooses to be used by the prevailing culture. So again, I'm not trying to go off. I'm not trying to say this is representative of all white folks anywhere. It is not. But we see it. We see it, and it's painful. It's painful to us. Like myself, I believe sometimes I failed to serve my country in the way that I could have, but I'm happy for the ways that I do it with no studios. I'm happy with the ways that I do it to get people to vote. But it's painful and hard to do that when we see moments like this playing out in front of our eyes.
Well, think about this, John. You have those Republicans you're talking about ignore subpoenas. They just ignored subpoenas. And now those same Republicans are saying to a black DA, we're going to subpoena you. You come on in here. Come on in here. You got to talk to us. We got some things to say to you. Think about this fact. And I've spoken about this on the show, and I find it remarkable that it took this country from 1776 to 1965 to actually begin moving toward being a more perfect union. We're still moving in that direction. As Reverend Al says all the time, we've made extraordinary gains over 50 years. We have a long way to go yet to be that more perfect union. But like you said, there's a lot to love about this country. You love this country.